Will retail supply chains weather the holiday peak? My guest is Howard Meitiner, Managing Director with Karl Marx Advisors. Hello, Howard.
Hello, good day.
Thank you for being with me today. So based on how you assess the way it looks now, what is the current situation with regard to the ability of the retail supply chain, do you think, to meet the holiday peak, which is just now beginning, actually?
Well, there's no doubt there's going to be shortages, and they've been very well documented by you and many others. So I think there are actions in place, and I think the retailers need to think about what they can control rather than the things they can't control. So to me, I would encourage them to focus on what they own and not what they don't have. Mm-hmm. It will, if they have depleted inventory, why discount the price? They are going to see a longer season. Amazon and others are already reporting record sales at this time because I think consumers are becoming very aware because there's been a lot of supply chain headlines, and it's sort of created what I call the toilet roll syndrome. If you tell everyone there's going to be a shortage of toilet rolls, they all go out and buy them.
Panic buying creates the need for panic buying.
So there's been this, the rhetoric creates a potential overreaction, and I think we will see that. Yeah. And particularly in areas like toys and electronics, where there's been a lot of headlines on those.
Now, you say what they own. And my understanding is that a lot of retailers brought in product early, anticipating this situation earlier in the year. They started their holiday shipments a little bit early and maybe got ahead of it, maybe gave them some kind of product. To what extent is that stuff available now in their hands and ready to be put on the shelves, if not already on the shelves?
Well, the larger companies, it's been well documented, have invested in their own ships and their own importation. It's much more difficult for the small and medium-sized companies because they have they are down the pecking order. Also, companies that are paying on time are naturally going to get a priority where the vendors are concerned. So what I think we're going to see is the big box retailers are going to do better in terms of continuity of supply. But remember, everyone thinks about this as if it's a potential disaster. The amount of unsold goods usually at the end of a season are extraordinarily high. So here is an opportunity for retailers to do higher sell-throughs at higher margins, because they would be ill-advised to absorb these cost increases that are occurring with shipping and in some of the raw material costs. So I think we're going to see a different Christmas, but everyone is thinking about 9% as a growth, and the inventory is there to do it. Not for every retailer, but those that employ artificial intelligence to help them with their predictive technologies, etc. As you say, they were on this early. No one expected the economy to recover as quickly as it did post-COVID. So I think people need to avoid beating themselves up for what is an unprecedented situation. And really, as I say, the advice I'm giving people, focus on what you own, focus on what you can control, and don't have sleepless nights about things that you can't correct at this point.
Yeah, just to do the best they can. From the consumer standpoint, however, we've written so many stories in the last several years about how spoiled consumers have become about getting their orders so quickly, within 2 days or 1 day or even a matter of hours. Will they have to temper their expectations this holiday season, or will they simply not expect to have to do that and then have that reverberate onto the image of the retailers who simply can't serve those needs?
Well, already USPS, UPS, and FedEx are not guaranteeing any specific times. So that's new. I think the US Postal Service has lengthened its delivery times. so there is a lot of information out there, which I think will modify people's expectations, and that's one of the reasons I think we're seeing people buy early.
Yeah.
But
You think they got the message?
They aren't going to get the same discounts they've traditionally
Yeah.
received.
Well, a lot of retailers are putting out that message quite early on to shop
Yes.
early. And I'm assuming
Yeah.
it sounds like consumers heard that message, or they themselves read the same stories that the retailers read and said, we better get our stuff soon. So in a
And
way,
it's so much more, and it's so much more profitable for the retailers. You know, when
Yeah.
you try to cram everything into 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and you have this out of date thing called Black Friday, which is no longer what it used to be. People were shopping beforehand and promoting beforehand.
Yeah.
So I think the season's going to be longer. It's going to be less intense, but overall, very successful.
Yeah. To what extent is this an unprecedented and perhaps unrepeatable situation this year versus something that might be in evidence on a permanent basis? Longer peak holiday peak shopping seasons, more diversified sourcing, more congestion in the future just because of consumer demand. Do you think that this state of affairs will continue?
I think if anyone believes this is a one-off, you know, they need to rethink their strategy in the same way that the disruption caused by COVID and how that influenced people's investments in technology and online. This will have the same profound effect on people totally rethinking their supply chain management. You know, we always used to talk in retail, didn't we, about the chief operating officer or the head merchant. The key person now is going to be that chief logistics guru, the person who can manage supply chain, because it's become paramount for retailers to overcome that. So robotics in warehousing, more perhaps alternative domestic sourcing, because when you add up the lead times and the costs and the potential disruption of overseas sourcing, there may well be some algorithms and some profit models that would suggest to certain types of retailers that a complete rethink of their sourcing makes more sense. So if they don't rethink it, they're in big trouble. In the same way, if people think that life will go back to pre-COVID, it won't. A good example is, look how it has changed the restaurant business in terms of the importance of delivery. And if people think salaries are going to go back down, think again. So retailers, restaurants, everyone is going to have to live with a higher salaried individual and look to alternatives to having excess staffing, as was the model before. And everyone's talking about the great resignation. I think they ought to start thinking about the great rehiring, because these people are going to want to have jobs.
At some point, they're going to come back into the workforce, you believe?
But they're not going to come back for the old jobs at the old pay. So again, I think, Bob, what we can expect is the winners here will be those that take note, pivot, and adjust and assume ongoing disruption and change.
But many of the things that you're suggesting here are long-term plays. I mean, you don't change sourcing overnight. You don't acquire and implement and become accustomed to new technology overnight. So then we're talking about something that could take several years to resolve, are we not?
Well, we thought that, didn't we, when all the stores and restaurants closed. Look how quickly people pivoted in terms of curbside pickups, online growth. It was extraordinary. So I think what we're going to see is the same thing. There were sleepers out there, companies that thought it was just going to carry on the way it is. I think we're going to see a lot of investment going in there. I think companies are going to get into trouble because they're going to need working capital to make these changes. So, but they're going to have to work faster. Life doesn't go in 3-year cycles anymore.
Yeah, much faster than that. Well,
much faster.
Yeah, and a lot of the innovations that companies thought they were going to take about 5 to 10 years to implement suddenly got done in 2. So that's Very interesting perception.
Look at something what Amazon do. I'm a great admirer of Amazon's proactiveness.
Mhm.
So they're having problems with some of their own distribution. So now they're with their third-party, smaller partners. They're letting them do the delivery, you know, where customers, instead of having it delivered by Amazon, can go in their partner stores. So they're constantly thinking of ways of overcoming short-term problems, but also thinking about long-term strategy.
Yeah, and it's
As
really
are many others.
well. Howard Meitiner of Karl Marx Advisors, thank you for your wisdom and letting us know that what we're experiencing now is something we're going to be with for a very long time. I really appreciate your insights into the state of the holiday season and going forward in the retail world. Thank you very much for being with me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.